about the CRCICA's background. Ladies and gentlemen, you are welcomed to the CRCICA's Dispute Board Rules second launch event. May I start with some few words about the CRCICA's background. The Cairo Regional Center for International Commercial Arbitration, CRCICA, is an independent non-profit international organization. The center was established in 1979 under the auspices of the Asian African Legal Consultative Organization, ALCO, in pursuance of its decision taken at the Doha session of 1978 to establish regional centers for international commercial arbitration in Asia and Africa. CRCICA has a board of trustees consisting of 24 members from amongst eminent African and Asian personalities and from elsewhere as well, specialized in the fields of international arbitration and international law. Their members carry out the functions provided for in the bylaws of the Board of Trustees, and in particular, the appointment of the director of the center in consultation with ALCO for a 4-year term, which can be renewed. Additionally, CRCICA is composed of an advisory committee which consists of up to 19 members appointed by the director of the center from amongst the members of the Board of Trustees, as well as eminent other practitioners specializing in the field of international arbitration, ADR, and international trade. The term of the advisory committee is also 4 years, like the term of the members of the Board of Trustees, and may be renewed once for a similar term unless otherwise determined due to specific or special circumstances. Their members carry out the functions provided for in the bylaws of the advisory committee. These functions include deciding on request for challenge of arbitrators and, starting from now, dispute board members as well. The CRCICA long-standing experience in the resolution of international disputes did not remain unnoticed. The center was awarded numerous awards for its fast dispute resolution, effective cost optimization, and professional services. In 2013 and in 2019, the CRCICA won the award of the Global Arbitration Review Guide to Regional Arbitration for an arbitral institution that impressed. The center was also awarded the Regional Institution Prize in recognition of its great strides in the past year. In November 2016, GAR renewed its acknowledgement of CRCICA's excellent work by putting the center in its whitelist. Likewise, international and regional organizations numerous times pay tribute to the services of the excellent standard provided by CRCICA. Noteworthy is the assessment report mandated by the African Development Bank in 2014, mentioning CRCICA as one of the best arbitration centers across the African continent and elsewhere. Not only CRCICA endeavors to meet today's needs, but the center also aims to innovate by addressing upcoming challenges. We previously invested massively in our hearing facilities and video conferencing capabilities and in technology in general. Thus, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit the world, we were able to effortlessly carry out our activities by switching to electronic means, both for hearing and submissions. Now, I will deal with the CRCICA's initiative and reason for issuing the CRCICA Dispute Board Rules along with its arbitration and mediation rules. And this is also one of the aspects of innovation undertaken by CRCICA. In Africa, the current pipeline of infrastructure projects amounts to no less than 2.5 trillion US dollars. These construction projects, no matter how small, tend to result in litigation or arbitration. This is why dispute boards are tremendously used in this sector to resolve the disagreements before they escalate. As of today, over 250 billion US dollars worth of construction and other projects worldwide have successfully utilized dispute boards. Thus, as an arbitral institution, CRCICA could no longer ignore the high demand in this industry for specific dispute board rules. Therefore, and this is consistent with our long-standing tradition of innovation, we are now addressing the issue by launching our 2021 dispute board rules. We knew we would not have to draft them from scratch, given that the center had already experience in dispute boards. Indeed, CRCICA has been agreed upon as an appointing authority of the dispute board provided for in infrastructure contracts financed by the World Bank. As such, the center has registered 2 dispute board proceedings arising out of such contracts. Thus, in September 2019, a dispute board committee was appointed by CRCICA for the purpose of drafting dispute board rules. It included renowned experts in the field of dispute boards and institutional arbitration from diverse regions of the world. Accordingly, I would like to thank their members, such as the experts coming from all the Middle East, namely Professor Dr. Mohammed Abdul Rauf, Engineer Mohammed Al-Haggan, who is also a qualified lawyer, Dr. Walid Al-Nimr, Mr. Ahmed Ibrahim, Dr. Inji Sirag, Professor Ahmed Wali, the provider of the first draft, and Engineer Aisha Nadar, who is with us, who has done a copious amount of work in reviewing and moderating the work of all the committee and reviewing the several drafts that were provided. Allow me also to pay a tribute to the contribution of our colleagues from Europe, Dr. Cyril Chern, Professor Nail Bonni, who is Irish but is also from Iraq, from our region, Professor Bernardo Cremades, as well as Mr. Jeremy Nicholson. CRCICA is also indebted to our counterparts, Mr. Henry Masunda, who is with us today, and Ms. Suzanne Rattray, representing the Sub-Saharan African region, and Mr. Ziyong Li from China, who is also with us today among the distinguished speakers. I have to also thank Ms. Hiba Ahmed Salim and Dr. Mohammed Hafiz from CRCICA, as well as Dr. Dalia Hussein, the Deputy Director of the CRCICA, for their copious work in supporting the moderators of this committee, and also the efforts done by Dr. Dalia in reviewing the Arabic version, as well as Professor Dr. Fathi Wali, who has provided us with very insightful comments on the first draft or the first translation of the Arabic versions of the rules. I also wish to thank my colleagues, Ms. Lubna Hazim and Ms. Malak Lotfi, for their efforts in reviewing the rules, and to thank our French lawyers and interns, Ms. Audrey Plaise and Ms. Laurie Labaille, for their efforts in delivering the French version of our rules, which will be finalized very soon, hopefully before the end of this month. I thank you all for your precious contributions. Next, with the assistance of Professor Ahmed Wali, we prepared the first draft of the CRCICA Dispute Board rules and circulated it to the Dispute Board Committee in October 2019. We then received the editing and comments of the first draft from all the members of the committee. Next, CRCICA, through a smaller number of the drafting members, committee headed by Aisha Nadar, who is with us, of course, today, moderating this session. We finalized the second draft, which was circulated to the Dispute Board Committee in December 2019. Following this colossal amount of work on several drafts, with the further inputs of the committee, we were able to finally issue the CRCICA Dispute Board rules in August 2020, one in English and in Arabic. Just like we did with our CRCICA arbitration rules, as I have mentioned, we are now finalizing the French version of the Dispute Board rules, so that the greatest number of people worldwide can recourse to them. And we are also open to other languages if there is a need for other versions in other languages. For the same purpose, we published dispute board model clauses that the parties are strongly encouraged to include in their contracts. So the CRCICA dispute board rules provide for each of the two types of dispute boards, the dispute review boards and the dispute adjudication boards, the DRB and the DAP. The parties can also choose either standard dispute board model clauses or multi-tiered dispute board model clauses that can be found in Annex A to the dispute board rules. Finally, Annex B contains a model dispute board member agreement, covering such matters as the dispute board members' undertaking, remuneration, and the duration of the agreement, amongst other matters. For choosing their international adjudicators, the parties can also rely on CRCICA's panel, which includes eminent personalities from all over the world, including the CRCICA Dispute Board Committee, which are also part of this panel. And this panel will also be enriched with French-speaking members in order to cover the Francophone area of Africa and elsewhere. Before letting my colleagues discuss the content in detail, I would like to mention one of the salient features of our dispute board rules, namely the optional administrative services. Indeed, under Article 18 of the CRCICA dispute board rules, the center can provide such service upon the request of either party or the dispute board members. In other words, the center will be able to facilitate the communications between the parties and the DB members, to provide necessary practical arrangements for meetings and hearings and other case management services as set out in the CRCICA dispute board rules. In other words, the center will endeavor to support and guide the parties at each stage of the adjudication process. Now, before giving the floor to our distinguished moderator, Ms. Aisha Nadar, I would like to briefly introduce her, although she does not need an introduction, but I will briefly mention that she is one of the most renowned practitioner and expert in the field of procurement, contract management, arbitration under various rules, mediation, dispute board, and expert witness. Over 30 years of hands-on international experience in all phases of procurement, project execution, and dispute resolution of complex infrastructure and defense systems. And she has also served as consultant to parties and party counsel on case evaluation and dispute management strategy development. And she has also served as consultant responsible for carrying out assignments related to the dispute resolution for organizations such as the World Bank, Mediation in Construction, USAID, and US DOD. She's a member of many committees and task groups. I will say, by way of example, she's a member of the CRCICA Advisory Committee, a member of the panel of conciliators of the ICSID. She was a member of the FIDIC board from 2016 to 2020, and she is still an adjudicator on the FIDIC president's list since 2015 and until present. She also co-chaired the ICC task force for update of ICC final report on construction industry arbitrations. Aisha, we are proud that you are Egyptian, but she is also Swedish and American. She is fluent in English and Arabic. That being said, I now leave the floor to you, Aisha, to start moderating this session.
Thank you, Dr. Ismail, for the all too generous introduction. It is my absolute privilege and pleasure to be here with you today. And I would like to start by adding my welcome to that of Dr. Ismail's to our audience and to our panelists. I'm particularly delighted to be here and see the efforts and the fruits of the innovative thinking of Dr. Ismail as a director of CRCICA in charting the path to answer industry's needs and embarking on this journey to deliver dispute board rules and be the first center in Africa to do so, focusing on project success. We have an eminent panel of speakers today that not only bring a global perspective, but will be able to share with you, the audience, a uniquely regional perspective, but more to that in just a moment. Before we embark on today and introducing our speakers, we, the panel, would like to get to know the audience a little bit more and know your backgrounds and your experiences. In this virtual world, it's a bit difficult, but we've devised a few poll questions so that we can get a sense of who's in the audience and engaging you that way. So Yahya, can I just ask you to put the first question up? And I invite the audience members to quickly answer these poll questions. They're about you, so it doesn't take much thinking. And the first question is about your experience with dispute board procedures, regarding experience, or you've never heard about dispute boards before. Both are fine. We just want to pitch our presentations to everybody so everybody's included. And so I give you maybe 10 more seconds before I ask Yahya to give us the results of the answers to the first question. So Yahya, what are the poll numbers look like? Do we have a lot of experienced people, or? So can we get the answer, please? So okay, we have some experience with dispute boards and some we won't. So we're going to start out by introducing dispute boards in context, which is a good thing. And of those people who have experience, we're going to move on to the next question and get a sense of. Yahya, can I please have you put up the second question? And this is just to kind of get a sense of, are you in dispute boards, are you kind of, or even outside of dispute boards, do you generally work as counsel? Are you representing the employer engineer side, contractor's perspective, DB member, or you don't participate in a current role? And again, in about 10 seconds, I'm going to ask Yahya to give us the results of this. And for those of you who might have been here yesterday, we're doing the same thing that we did yesterday, just to kind of make sure that we're understanding who's with us. So Yahya, can you please give us the results of the second poll question? We have a lot of lawyers in the audience. But we also have a nice spread of everybody else that is there. And that's what's expected in the construction world or in complex transactions. It takes all of us as construction professionals to take it through. And finally, the last question, to just quickly do that. And this last question is just really about the CRCICA dispute board rules, to see if you've heard about them before, or is this launch event your first time to hear about them? So have you heard that? Were you aware of them before the event? And again, 10 seconds. And Yahya, can you just give us the response to that? Yep. So this is a very valuable exercise that we're running because not everybody was aware that CRCICA had published dispute board rules, whether they were aware of dispute boards or not. So I think what we can glean from this audience is experienced practitioners, whether they've used dispute boards or not. And I think you'll all agree with us that as practitioners, we find that long-term projects, long-term transactions are prone to disputes. And this we've experienced particularly true in the construction sector. But what COVID has taught us as well is that today's cost-sensitive clients don't want to only resolve disputes efficiently, but they demand the legal market focus on project success, partner with them on project success, and where possible, effectively avoid disputes and only leave those that cannot be avoided to be resolved. It is for this reason that CRCICA embarked on this journey to publish dispute board rules. Now, for the task at hand today, our objective is to walk through the innovations in dispute management and to introduce the CRCICA dispute board rules, both their content and from a comparative perspective, and then also from a regional perspective and their utility. We have structured the session today to include short presentations by each of the speakers, followed by a roundtable. And I want to make this session as interactive as possible. So please do feel free to put your questions in the Q&A section, and we will try and deal with those along the way at the appropriate moments. I will introduce the topics that everybody's going to cover before I introduce the speakers. So Ms. Yasmin Sentinel will be helping us, will be setting the stage of dispute boards and dispute boards in their context in a global session. And she is going to be followed by Mr. Henry Masunda, who will take us through the CRCICA dispute board rules, what they offer and what they can offer, particularly in the context of Africa. Then we will, and Henry will be followed by Nicholas Brown, and Nicholas will give us a comparative flavor of the CRCICA dispute board rules, juxtaposed or in a comparative nature to ICC and FIDIC. And then when we talk about infrastructure spend globally, we cannot ignore One Belt, One Road. And Mr. Zhiyong Li will give us a perspective of the utility of the CRCICA rules for in the context of OBOR projects. So let me introduce our eminent panel today. Obviously, if I gave an introduction as generous as is owed to each of these individuals, I would take the rest of the 90 minutes introducing each one of them. But I will try and give you a short flavor of their background to give you a perspective from which they speak. Ms. Sentinel, Yasmin, if I may, is a lawyer. She's based in Turkey and she specialized in construction law. She's also the head of the Society of Construction Law in Turkey. that was just newly launched. And she focuses both on transactional and disputes. She is most importantly, from this context of dispute boards, she is a regional director responsible for the MENA region in Region 2 of the Dispute Resolution Board Foundation. And so she's very well placed to help us from a contextual nature looking at dispute boards. As I said, she'll be followed by Mr. Henry Masunda. Henry has more than 35 years of practical and professional experience in design, administration, and project management of building and civil works, and providing advisory support on infrastructure projects. He is a civil engineer from Zambia and has a master's in construction law from Aberdeen. He's listed on the FIDIC list of adjudicators, and he's also on the DRBF's president list of international adjudicators, and is currently serving on dispute boards in Botswana, Ethiopia, Lesotho, Malawi, Rwanda, Tanzania, Uganda, and Zambia. He's a FIDIC accredited trainer and has peer-reviewed many FIDIC contracts. He's also a member of the FIDIC certification board and is an examination writer for the FIDIC exam, the FCL. And as indicated by Dr. Ismail, Henry was also on the drafting committee of the CRCICA rules. So no better person to give us an overview of the CRCICA rules with a regional viewpoint of Africa. Henry will, of course, be followed by Nicholas Brown. Nicholas is a partner at Pinsent Masons based in Singapore, although serving clients internationally. He's a qualified lawyer in Australia, England and Wales, and in Hong Kong, and a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, and a panelist on several centers. He has over 25 years, he looks very young, but he has over 25 years of experience in advising and representing project participants in the resolution of disputes arising on some of the world's largest infrastructure projects in energy, transportation, and the building sector. He's advised on infrastructure projects in Africa, Europe, Middle East, East Asia, and Oceania regions. He sits as arbitrator and dispute board member. And if that's not enough, he's written several books, and his latest book, Everything You Want to Know About FIDIC and More, FIDIC 2017, A Definitive Guide to Claims and Disputes, will be published next month. So again, nobody better placed to give us that comparative view. And finally, then we turn to One Belt, One Road, and to Mr. Ziyong Li, who is general counsel of one of the top international contractors. He holds years of practical experience in international projects in various countries. He's an arbitrator at Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen, and other arbitration commissions. He's also listed as a mediator in the Singapore International Mediation Center and an expert at ICC ADR China. And again, we are so lucky to have him speaking on CRCICA rules as it relates to One Belt, One Road. So we are not going to get only a global perspective today. We are going to be able to have regional spotlights as we go through our presentations. So enough from me. Yasmin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Aisha, and for your kind words and introduction as well. Hello, everyone. This is Yasemin. It is a great pleasure and honor to be here today among the distinguished panel and in this very important inaugural event, the launch of the dispute board rules. I will, as Aisha stated, I will try to approach the dispute board historically first, and then explain the DRBF's role and a little bit of what we are doing in this context. And finally, very briefly, I will try to provide a couple of practical considerations. So let's start with the concept itself. What is a board? I find it specific definition very useful to define all the features of the dispute boards as follows. A dispute board is an intermediate dispute resolution mechanism established at the outset of the project and remaining in place until the end of the project, whereby board members with the expertise of the relevant construction sector and upon request by the parties provide prompt support, recommendations or decisions for the ultimate benefit of the project. So this is a project level mechanism which is very unique and different than the other alternative dispute resolution methods used worldwide. The concept was experimentally used in a very large and long-term infrastructure project in US in late 70s. So it's quite an old concept indeed. And because in that specific project, there was substantial success in terms of preventing and resolving disputes at project level, it has been developed further and started to get used even more in the United States and especially in the 90s. Of course, common law countries follow very promptly right after that. And maybe all of us know UK first adopted obligatory and statutory adjudication in 1998. Australia also followed and adopted a series of similar concepts in its public procurement mechanisms and legislations. And also, it goes without saying, FIDIC became increasingly interested in the concept, and as of the 1999 edition, dispute boards indeed made their substantial way into FIDIC practice, and with the help of FIDIC practice, of course, they gained international and global awareness and recognition. I could say developing countries, other countries, let's say, are making still their baby steps into the concept, and as well as other alternative dispute resolution methods. However, it is also fair to say that there is already an awareness because of internationally funded projects, because as you know, development banks are using and are recommending the use of dispute boards in all funded projects by them in their procurement rules, in their form of contracts. And very lastly, although it is a creature of construction sector, dispute boards are used and may be used in all other long-term contracts, which are continuous in nature, because this is where the dispute board best fits indeed, not in, like, for example, just one obligation related sale contract, but a 3-4 year long continuous obligation style construction contracts. And therefore, for example, IT projects and or manufacturing processes are using dispute boards and continuously developing the concept as well since the establishment. And with this very short introduction, I will say dispute boards do not go without the Dispute Resolution Board Foundation in relevance. So I would like to very briefly mention of what DRBF does and what is our historical background. Indeed, in parallel with the developments in the United States of the increased use of the board concept in public procurement projects, in 1996, Dispute Resolution Board Foundation was established in United States. But I will say quite shortly after its establishment in the United States, And in parallel with the global increase in the usage of the concepts, DRBF increased its size and regional concern as well in parallel. As of the 2000s, I could easily say, we started to have regional committees, and we currently have 3 regions dealing with regional issues more on a more hands-on matter with their separate board of directors. And we are even expecting a 4th region to join us very shortly in the upcoming year. The first region is the initiating region, which is the United States and North America. The second region, I will say the third region, and you will understand why. The third region is Australasia, and it includes Australia and Oceania in a way as a region. And the second region, as we call it, deals with all the rest. So, and that is why we are expecting to have some more regional committees to be in place in short future, because region 2 is quite big indeed. What we are doing very basically is the promotion and development of the dispute board concept globally. And all our activities revolve around our main purpose. Of course, we are a non-governmental, non-profit organization. So all our committees and executive people are working on that basis. We have institutional liaisons, such as CRCICA, this kind of very important institutions. We are more than happy to cooperate on a continuous basis for the promotion of the concept. We also organize conferences, workshops, trainings, and finally, I will say another important thing that we are doing is to gather guidelines for the effective, efficient use and best practices of board concept itself. So with that said, and very, again, briefly, a couple of considerations, and I just said best practices. Maybe I should just go and focus on it a little bit. As I have stated in the definition of board concept itself, we have a couple of practical considerations for the best practice recommendations, let's say. As the unique feature of a board is the prevention nature, the avoidance nature, we highly recommend and consider best practice to have standing boards as opposed to ad hoc boards, because we truly believe that this unique feature is fully there when you have a standing board in place, and you can make use of the informal processes, the preventive processes of the boards. And hence, in line with this basic and fundamental recommendation, we also consider that early appointment of the boards is a very important feature and should be considered by the parties in order your board to be effectively working and become familiarized with the project and its issues since the outset. And we also encourage the boards and the parties to hold regular meetings and site visits accordingly to become fully acquainted with the project and to be able for the board to intervene in case they spot issues and to offer their assistance for informal assistance matters, for example. And finally, of course, it goes without saying, the parties also are encouraged to use the opinions, the non-binding recommendations feature of the boards, of the standing boards, whenever issues may be in nature of being intervened. So at their early stage, without becoming disputes, if parties actually consult with the board members and have their opinion on specific subjects, we have seen in our record that it substantially prevents matters to be evolving into disputes in due course. So it's effectively set a standard between the parties and disagreements are accordingly prevented. And finally, I would like to give a couple of interesting places with the usage of dispute boards. Dispute avoidance panels are used in specific projects as well, which are very large size in nature. For example, Olympic Games, both in Rio 2016 and London 2012, have used dispute avoidance standing panels. As you know, the construction phase for the Olympic Games is always a race against time. And hence disputes are probably the most unwanted in an Olympic game related construction project. And hence, in both Rio and London, dispute boards served for that purpose, for avoiding disputes and in order to make the project finish on time. And actually for Rio, the RBF got involved officially as well in order to establish such panels and help the organizing committee. And finally, another very interesting example that I find it personally attractive is the CERN Hadron Collider in Switzerland, which has a very long standing dispute avoidance panel with multidisciplines involved. Another very specific example of racing against time and also, of course, quality purposes as well. Because of the nature of the works. So there as well, we have standing, very long-term committed dispute boards taking their roles. And with that, I will be finishing my very short presentation. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Yasmin, and for that tour de force and quite insightful presentation. Henry, I'd like to turn it over to you now to walk us through the CRCICA rules from your perspective.
Thank you, Aisha. I think in the interest of time, I'll try and skip off some of the introductory notes. I want to say that I've already been introduced as a DB practitioner in Africa, and therefore my comments I'll focus on the benefits of the center to the DB practitioners and the clients in the African region or the near regions as well. It's been said already by Dr. Salem in the introduction that this is an innovation and the development of an institutional facility which offers assistance in adjudication is something that provides an alternative center in the African region and the nearer regions as well. In Africa, we have most client institutions who lack personnel experience in drafting contracts and in particular dispute resolution provisions. So you find that there is a cut and paste of inserting in European-based centers and rules which do not relate to the requirements of the projects. And the most important, there's no support budget to support those procedures. So you find that when the disputes arise, the parties are stuck because who pays for the cost of accessing these international institutions? And they talk about flying to European centers, and with the pandemic, the COVID pandemic now, these centers have been shut out to the outside world, in particular the African users. So this has been a problem, and that the launch is timely. The addition of adjudication services to the Cairo Center is an innovation that is welcome, and that the launch should help increase awareness, because most people are only aware of these common institutions like the London centers, the Swiss centers, the Switzerland-based centers, and other international institutions. This is the first one in Africa, and is expected. The achievements of the Cairo Center have been highlighted by Dr. Salim, and I think the adjudication services will follow through with the same standards of services that Cairo Center continues to provide. Nicholas will talk about comparisons with other institutions like FIDIC in terms of their rules, dispute boards. All I can say is that there's increased use now in Africa of dispute boards. Most funding agencies like the World Bank are now insisting on the formation of these DABs or dispute boards from the onset to access funding. So this has placed a burden on the African users in understanding what the rules and procedures are. And it's not uncommon to be involved on a project where nobody knows about any rules and procedures except the DB personalities on the project. And this is quite common on African projects. So a center such as the Cairo Center provides easy access. Unlike the European-based centers, parties can easily fly to Cairo and get a briefing from the center. There's always difficulties in getting the DB to start lecturing or training the parties in the use of dispute boards. And I'm hoping that this may be one of the new additions that the center can add on the training and to the parties on how to administer dispute boards for those that would want to learn more. In a number of cases, sometimes the monetary value may be small on a project, and this has presented problems for the parties in Africa to resort to accessing European-based institutions when, in fact, the budget allocation cannot afford the legal support. Parties have to engage legal practitioners who are based in those European centers. And this then causes a breakdown of the process, and parties then resort to court processes because that is the only alternative available, especially for the public institutions. Dr. Salem has highlighted the articles, the rules which have been published. As a DB practitioner, and in particular in Africa, I can highlight a few that are the new rules of the Cairo Center, which are very innovative. Apart from the usual, first I must say, almost all the rules which have been developed are addressing problems that are experienced by the panels of practitioners who are involved. So these are among the best that you can get from any institutions in the world today. In terms of the appointment procedures, in the establishment of dispute boards, in the control of the proceedings, and one of the highlights that I can talk about, the Article 9, the provision of information. I think the rules have gone further in instructing, if you like, or reminding parties of the need to cooperate and provide information to the dispute boards. This is always a big problem when you get to a project and parties are not willing to provide information to the practitioner. So this has been a good upgrade of the rules. Another Article 10 on site visits and meetings is also more explicit and instructive to the party. In the other rules of procedures, it basically said GB can carry out visits 3 times a year, but doesn't say anything else. I think the new rules of the Cairo Center is more detailed and helps the parties to understand the need for site visits And that also goes to the other articles 11 on written notifications and communications. I think that amplifies and improves on some of the challenges that you face when you use other procedure rules. Yasmin was talking about dispute avoidance, and in this case, the Cairo, the CRCICA rules under the dispute avoidance, Article 13, it improves some of the provisions I've seen in other procedural rules, and that the DB plays a role of dispute avoidance by providing advisory opinions, but also with the addition that the DB on its own initiative, when you're practicing as DB practitioner and you raise issues of matters which can be resolved by the parties, there's always a suspicion that you are probably fishing for disputes on a project, or you're encouraging parties to go into dispute. But this has been clearly spelled out in the rules, and therefore it helps the DB to use this rule and request the parties to apply themselves to the available DB to assist in the resolving disputes. The other rules on informal dispute avoidance, on conduct of hearings, also incorporates the new requirements, the electronic means of dealing with hearings. Under the conclusions, Article 16, it also deals with recommendations or decisions of the DB and incorporates new procedures or new rules which are not available in the old rules for the other institutions in terms of correcting a DB decision. Some of these are not even available in some of the arbitration acts I've seen in Africa. So this is a welcome addition that the parties can request for correction of a decision, because sometimes it's a typo error. It's a cut and paste problem. And instead of parties getting bogged down to go to arbitration, they can easily rely on this rule and get a decision corrected. Dr. Salem highlighted the optional administrative services of the center, and I would like to say that these are very unique, elaborate, and progressive, and I would encourage the participants to read them because the most procedure rules assist the parties in the appointments. They can talk about the standard agreements. They cannot talk about the fees, but most of them, once parties access them to appoint the DB practitioners, they end there, and it's a bye to everybody. The parties then have to start getting into the details of proceeding further without any guides, any rules, and then it's up to the parties on their understanding, on their levels of knowledge to be able to move forward. And this is where I think the center's rules under the optional administrative services helps in also resolving disputes. The center deals with the new rules under this provision, deals with resignations, termination of DB agreements, and also resolution of disputes between the parties and the DB practitioners. These are practical problems, and they do arise, and there are not so many procedural rules that offer this service. And I think for me, this is a welcome addition. In addition, the Center Cairo, under the optional administrative services, facilitates communication with the parties. This is important, especially in a case where parties have legal teams and they are focused on moving to arbitration, and any reasons to terminate the proceedings DB to move to arbitration. I think the center being able to provide services like communication, writing to the parties, setting out the timelines for them is a very unique and welcome addition. And it should also be able to encourage some reluctant parties, because you do get parties who are reluctant to proceed. And I think the center's role in this should help some reluctant parties to proceed with the DB processes. So again, in this era of COVID-19, A center in Africa, I think, will help a lot of parties in Africa. And there's nothing wrong in inserting the Cairo Center in the particular provisions to be the center of reference rather than go to ICC, because parties can easily get to Cairo. It's cheaper to get to Cairo. And I think the environment is less intimidating for some of the parties. Getting visas to Egypt is easier than to some of the European centers. The requirements to get a visa now for most people in Africa is very difficult. Some countries are on the red list, and it doesn't matter where you're flying from, as long as you hold a passport from that country, you will not access it. I'm aware of some arbitration proceedings which have had to be terminated or put on hold for 2 years because they can't access the London Center of Arbitration. And so this is a welcome addition, and welcome in particular for DB proceedings. I think in trying not to, I don't want to preempt other people, and are looking at the time, I'd like to stop here and pass on the benefit of time. I have a few more points, but I'm hoping that the DB practitioners in Africa will recognize the unique place of the CRCICA and be able to use it. And I'm hoping that the center will access the panels of practitioners to continuously improve the rules and expand them. And I hope they'll be available to continue providing that assistance to the center. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. And without, maybe we'll be able to circle back in the Q&A. And thank you for that. So now we will go to Nicholas, who will further kind of investigate and in a comparative way the rules, the CRCICA rules.
Thank you very much, Aisha. I won't supplement your kind introduction to me, but I will express my gratitude for your personal reflections on my likely age. I can assure you that I am living through my 5th decade. Now to the business at hand. I've analysed this, and I can see that there are 3 key areas where the centre's rules have really moved the dial on effective dispute avoidance and resolution. Firstly, in terms of the required standards of dispute board members, their qualifications and obligations. Secondly, in the wider impetus for dispute avoidance techniques, and there's some very interesting developments there. And then thirdly, in the centre's wide and supportive administration and decision-making functions. And indeed, Henry has given us a flavour of those. I'm now going to develop these 3 points and illustrate them in a comparative way, focusing on similar provisions of the FIDIC models, both the 1st and the 2nd editions, the ICC dispute board rules, and a couple of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators dispute board rules. So starting first with the standards of qualifications of a dispute board member under the CRCICA rules. These rules, they impose certain expectations as to the standards of a member that are perhaps unique. Firstly, not only must a member have the expertise to comprehend and interpret the contract, which is a standard requirement, but the member must also have, quote, suitable skills to manage the dispute. Now, that isn't empty language. That is an expression of a minimum standard of skill set to manage a dispute. And that is a considerable skill set in my experience where it exists. And secondly, the member should have a suitable regional experience. Now, that's more to my mind than diversity of a panel of practitioners from whom a selection may be made. That's saying that the individual member herself or himself must command regional experience. These criteria are not formally singled out as selection criteria for board members under the FIDIC system. Of course, the appointing entity might consider them in practice, but they're not enshrined as criteria. The ICC dispute board rules do share with the centre a recognition of the significance of nationality and residence, but the candidate's ability to conduct the work to be carried out isn't mentioned in the ICC rules. So in these respects, the Centre's rules are truly innovative. Let's move to the wider impetus for dispute avoidance. The first edition of the FIDIC, perhaps the grandfather of internationally of dispute board rules, didn't provide for any form of informal assistance by the board aimed at the avoidance of disputes. Many of you will be aware that the red, yellow, and the pink book did establish a standing board, and that board, if well resourced, would seek to nip a dispute in the bud when seeking to bring about agreement on a matter to be determined by the engineer. But that's really as far as it went under the first edition rules. Only the red book created that standing board, and the pink book later with those powers to intervene with a view to avoiding disputes. The major tool of the red book's standing DAB was the informal opinion. But prior to any disagreement developing into a dispute, and typically before a final determination was made by the engineer, the parties could jointly refer a matter to the DAB for it to give its opinion. Now, the more recent second editions of the FIDIC did provide for the provision of a flexible variety of informal assistance, unless there was an adjudication hearing taking place. But those services could only be extended, or can only be extended, upon a request of both the parties for informal assistance. What Article 13.2 of the Centre's rules does is empower the board on its own initiative to raise any matter with the parties jointly in an effort to avoid any potential disputes and in an endeavour to help the parties. This power, to my mind, reflects a similar self-activation power of the dispute board under Article 16 of the ICC dispute rules and Article 12 of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators rules. But the policy behind this power is obviously to enable an experienced board to self-initiate its informal assistance. But the self-activation power reflected in Article 10.3 envisages that during a meeting or on a site visit, the board may raise any potential disagreement that it considers could arise between the parties and encourage the parties to avoid that disagreement on their own without the involvement of the board. So the powers of the board go much further than was previously the case under the other rules. Furthermore, the parties are themselves obliged to endeavour to keep the board informed of any disagreements which may arise during the performance of the contract. And that, I think, connects well with Henry's comments earlier as to the provision of information to the board to enable it to do its job. And then lastly, the third area of innovation are the wide and supportive administrative and decision-making functions of the Centre, and they are considerable. The Centre provides a set of administrative services to the parties and the dispute board members that are truly unique in the field of dispute boards. These services are optional, as mentioned, and offered for a fixed fee. They'll be made available upon a request by either party or by the dispute board members. Now, leaving aside for the time being its administrative functions, the Centre provides critical support in the constitution and possible reconstitution, if necessary, of a dispute board. This can occur in four ways. Firstly, as to the constitution of the board, where a number of the members comprising the board is unstated and the parties can't agree on the number, then, generally speaking, the board will be composed of 3 members. The Centre retains the power, however, following consultations with the parties, to decide, in view of the relevant circumstances, that a sole member shall be appointed. So it may well be that the circumstances of the project change and the nature of disputes that are likely to arise on that project will be such that a single member would be appropriate. This power enables the Centre to enhance the efficiency and the economy of the board without a loss of competency or balance where the relevant circumstances are amenable to a single member. Secondly, if the parties fail to establish a board or to agree on a chairperson, then the Centre must, after due consultation with the parties, appoint the member or members as soon as practicable after a written request of any or all parties. This appointee must be appointed from the Centre's panel of dispute board members, and the member selection function on the part of the Centre reflects the power of, say, the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators under their dispute rules. In the case of the FIDIC adjudication system, the appointing entity is empowered to appoint a member of the board, and that can arise in 4 similar situations, which I won't delve into. Although FIDIC is prepared to perform the role of appointing entity, in practice, however, at least in my experience, the appointing entity can be anyone whom the dominant party in the relationship decides at the outset will have that function. And there are often self-serving or just perverse, sometimes non-existent choices made in practice. So having an established, reliable centre as the appointing authority, appointing entity, I consider to be an advance. Thirdly, the centre is empowered to decide the fixed fees of the board. This is a more established power than one sees in, say, Article 17 of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators rules, which empowers the Institute upon due consideration with the parties to decide what is a reasonable compensation. Fourthly, the Centre has the power to form an impartial and independent tripartite ad hoc committee. This must be formed from among the members of the advisory committee, and the committee can decide finally and conclusively on any application by a party for the removal of a board member. There's no such facility under the FIDIC first editions. Perhaps the closest system is that provided in rather skeletal terms under Article 6.5 of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators rules. Under the FIDIC second editions, the board may refer a challenge of a board member to a 4-step procedure, and the final step of this procedure is a decision of the ICC, administered by the ICC International Centre for ADR, with the actual decision being taken by the president of the standing committee, assisted by the ICC Centre for ADR. So there are similarities in those arrangements. Now turning to the administration, this is where you see a whopping list of services being offered by the Centre. The Centre can, if so desired by the parties and the members, administer the board facility in 7 ways, in at least 7 ways. Firstly, the Centre can produce and provide the parties with a dispute board member agreement. There's no facility for this administrative service in the FIDIC procedural rules, or the ICC rules, or the Chartered Institute's rules. Secondly, the Centre may support the process by maintaining a file of written communications, in addition to facilitating communications between the parties and or the dispute board members, functions similar to that of the Secretariat under the ICC rules of arbitration. But there's nothing like this secretarial service existing in the other dispute board rules. Thirdly, by providing necessary and practical arrangements for meetings and hearings at the Centre's premises or at one of its alternative hearing centres, these arrangements can include an assistance for the board members to establish the date, time and place of any hearings, so scheduling, the arranging of meeting rooms for hearings or deliberations of the board, as well as breakout rooms, arranging for telephone conferencing, video conferencing facilities, arranging secretarial and clerical assistance, making available or arranging interpretation services, noting, of course, that the language that's been decided to apply for the processes of the board may not be ones that everyone has a mastery of. The Centre can make arrangements for recording services. It can even facilitate entry visas to the Centre's host state, if possible, when required. It can arrange accommodation for the parties, even with special rates where possible. So these are truly innovative, and it can make the above practical arrangements beyond those practical arrangements because they are non-exhaustive lists. Fourthly, in terms of administrative support, the Centre can provide fund holding services, especially through holding the parties' deposits and dispersing the members' fees and expenses. Now, in the arbitration world, centres like the London International Court of Arbitration will offer this service to non-administered arbitrations. For instance, arbitration conducted under the UNCITRAL rules. But I'm not aware of any similar service in the adjudication world. By ensuring that the procedurally important dates are followed, the centre can support the board. It can advise the board and the parties when dates are coming up to and haven't been adhered to. The board can provide secretarial or clerical assistance in other ways. And lastly, but not leastly, by carrying out any other practical task entrusted by the centre, on the centre by the parties or the dispute board members, such as serving communications, notifications, and submissions. So in numerous ways that I've attempted to outline today, the centre's rules promise a real advance on the conduct of disputed avoidance and interim provisional adjudication. From my perspective as an international dispute resolution practitioner and a commentator, these rules represent the last, perhaps not the final, word on the state of art in contractual dispute boards internationally. So I wish to humbly commend the Centre for the development of such a sophisticated set of rules. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicholas. And I expect to see these rules written into every transaction that you negotiate from now on every contract. I expect to see CRCICA rules mentioned. So no, thank you for that. And I think it really highlights some of the unique features in a comparative way. So, and Lee, I'm going to turn it over to you now. With all these unique features, is there space for CRCICA in One Belt, One Road projects? You're still muted.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Thank you, Aisha. Hello, everyone, and all the friends online. I'm Jun Lee from China, a practitioner in the international construction dispute resolution sector. As per today's schedule, I will share with all the friends some of my experience and understanding about the advantage of CRCICA dispute board rules in supporting more stakeholders to avoid and resolve the dispute, and help the project to achieve their target by adopting the rules in a proper and effective manner. Before we talk about the One Belt, One Road initiative market, it's worthy to have a look of the Chinese international construction industry. For the past 30 up to 40 years, the Chinese international contractors have been developing with a high growth rate and have the turnover value of USD 155.94 billion in the year of 2020. And the market along the Belt and Road initiative takes up 50 up to 16 of the whole value and the whole market. For the past 30 years, the business model also have been changing from the simple labor service subcontracting to equipment supplying or subcontracting, and to the general contracting and engineering, procurement and construction, that means the EPC contract model, to the latest stage of what we call it in China, EPC plus financing, and the PPP BOT with the investment plus construction and plus the operation integrated model. There are various parties and legal entities in the international construction industry and dispute. And there is the One Belt, One Road dispute resolution survey conducted by Beijing International Operations Center, China International Contractors Association, and the Tianjin University, with data collected from more than 300 international contractors, financiers, insurance companies, and other entities. It was shown from the conclusion that for the past 5 years, most of the disputes are between the employer and the contractor, then between the contractor and the subcontractor, and among the JV partners. And there are also disputes between the contractor and the supplier, government and investor, and the financier and borrower, financing and host government. It varies from different projects. According to the International Operations Survey conducted by Queen Mary University of London and Pinter Masons in 2019, the latest performance, poor contract management, poor contract drafting, suspension and termination of the contract, and of unforeseen risks are the top 5 factors causing dispute in the international project. And according to the OBOR Dispute Resolution Survey, delay in time for completion, variations, unforeseen risks, payment methods, and the suspension are the top 5 factors causing dispute in the One Belt, One Road initiative project for the past 5 years. And for the financing involved projects, the transaction structure is more complicated with more stakeholders connected by different legal and contractual relationships, such as the typical PPP and the BOT project. The employer will sign a loan agreement with the financing institutions and sign a concession agreement with the government and sign another power purchase agreement with the power purchaser. Then we sign the construction or the EPC contract with the contractor to deliver the project. You will notice that so many stakeholders are combined and integrated within one project. Any dispute or disagreement within the EPC or the construction contract will affect further to the power purchase agreement, the concession agreement, and the loan agreement. This is the fact, and also this is currently where we are working now. Normally, both the loan agreement and power purchase agreement will have the commercial operation date fixed without too many days flexible or extension allowed. Since the financing institution is expecting the loan to be paid back within the certain and well-scheduled period, and the power purchaser is expecting the power to be delivered within the fixed operation date. That is the main reason for the investor or the SPV company and the employer to fix the time for completion with the EPC contract agreement. The delays, the suspension of the works may cause various photo problems to the project, such as the termination of the concession agreement or the termination of the power purchase agreement or the breach of the loan agreement. And if the delay continues for a certain number of days, the return rate of the investment might decrease and investment target may not be achievable. And then we will see the article of this CRCICA, Article 3 of CRCICA Dispute Review Board, DRB, and Article 4 of the CRCICA rules, means the Dispute Adjudication Board, provide a standing dispute board to help the parties avoid or overcome any disagreement or dispute that arise during the implementation of the contract and assist the parties in resolving their disagreement or differences at an early stage or even before they arise, through creating an atmosphere of communication between them. Such standing DRB or DAB mechanism will benefit the projects by early identification, allocation, and separation of the responsibility for the project delay among the parties, and provide a periodical review of the project progress to avoid the interim extension of time, and accelerating or expediting as necessary to recover the delay once the responsibility is identified, and then reducing the loss of productive time, resolution of dispute before going to operation, and greatly minimize costs, especially the litigation and operation fees. According to the survey conducted by DRBF on behalf of Asian Development Bank in 2018, to verify the successful ratio of the DRB and DB in resolving disputes, there was 230 project data collected for comparison purpose. It was shown the final result of the survey that there were 337 recommendations issued by the DRB and 512 formal decisions issued by the DAB. Within the 337 recommendations, 93% were complied with, and only 7% were advanced to further stage for formal decision. And within these 512 formal decisions, 51% of them were resolved even with notification of dissatisfaction, that means NOD. But still, 66 of them were compiled with immediate action. And only 6% of them were referred to arbitration. And within that 60% of the cases brought to arbitration, only 1.37 of the total number were overturned by the arbitration tribunal. That means from this survey, we may come into a conclusion that both the DRB and the DAB are holding a success ratio of 93 or up to 94% in resolving the dispute, either directly complied with or indirectly with agreement after the recommendation or the decision granted by the DRB or the DAB. My personal experience in the past almost just nearly 20 years also indicating the same success ratio for the cases and also the project which I involved. At last, I would like to recommend that the DRB and DB rules of CRCICA DB rules is very much and more suitable for the owner and contractor to select for the complicated project, finance and investment involved project. Of course, the functions in the dispute avoidance also benefit both the owner and contractor to keep the business relationship cordial and in relationships and avoid a reputation for being litigious. That's all my parts to share, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for that. And I realize that we have extended our presentation time because I asked for questions from the audience and I didn't receive any. And we were getting such valuable information from our presentations that I didn't want to break anybody off or cut anybody off, because we received very valuable statistics just now on the convincing statistics of the value of dispute boards, and they're an investment. They can be an insurance. I realize that some of you have to leave because the scheduled time is until 11:30 Cairo time. Some of you will have to leave. And those who can stay, if we have questions and if we have dialogue, this is what I said yesterday, that I'm practicing my Egyptian self, not my Swedish self, and will extend the time. So I invite those who can stay to stay. But I know that Ms. Sentinel has a hard stop and will have to leave. But so with that, I have one question that was put into the, Mr. Omar, I guess I have a question that says, what's the distinction between the Cairo Center rules and other previous rules? I thought I was very impressed with both Henry's commentary and with Nicholas's thoughtful review of taking a comparative view. And I guess I would recommend to you to listen to the YouTube video, particularly focused on Nicholas's presentation of the comparative nature between the Cairo Center rules, CRCICA's rules, and the ICC rules, and FIDIC and the CIR rules. So, and you can also listen to yesterday's presentation that gave a little bit of, but I would just like to gain the benefit of Ms. Sentinel's experience before she has to leave, and I'll take the liberty of asking a question. We received some interesting and impressive statistics from Lee just now. So Yasmin, can I ask you, in your experience, and you were saying countries are taking baby steps, and I've heard, and my experience, it's very difficult to convince at times employers what the benefit of dispute boards are. Do you find that they're actually cost effective, and do they save money for parties, and how is it that you approach this?
Thank you, Aisha. Actually, it's a core question. And as the employers are usually the parties who need convincing indeed, probably I will answer it with two layers. To employers, we primarily try to convey that when a dispute board renders a decision or a recommendation, you indeed have in your hands a very valuable expert opinion on a specific dispute, which does not come from the other party. So it's not like a claim from the contractor, which you may consider in your decision-making mechanism, which is very problematic at times, especially in governmental authorities. so you may consider it very subjective and not likely to be accepted as a claim, but once that claim is treated by an independent expert panel who are anyhow the distinguished people who are going to be involved at later stages of any dispute resolution scheme in any event, we are trying to convey that, dear employer, you have a very valuable tool that you can demonstrate at your decision-making mechanism in your organization, saying that we have to give a decision on a specific point between the parties. And in order to support the decision, not only we have the claim, but we have actually the dispute board's approach to this. So this approach will be probably more or less the same if we continue this issue in the further stages of dispute resolution. And hence, in a way, we are trying to encourage the employers that use this document in order to be able to make that decision. So as opposed to, of course, there is a whole issue of enforcement of dispute board decisions and or recommendations, which may be very problematic, especially in countries that you just said that are making their baby steps because they don't recognize any enforceability in these kind of decisions. But the enforceability does not come only by legal force. The enforceability, when it comes from the parties, the willingness of the parties to make the decision and or recommendation enforceable, is more precious. So we are trying to demonstrate that the employer should use this in its decision-making process as a good tool, as a good reference to at least resolve some matters and do not let them pending for a long time. So that is the part that we are trying to convey that is best to use the dispute board mechanism.
Thank you, Yasmin. And I would also like to get Henry's experience on how you've been able to convince employers to use dispute boards in your vast experience in Africa. And then I'd like to ask the same question to Lee on how you're able to convince employers. Henry?
Aisha, there are so many areas where I can give practical examples of the benefit of the dispute board. You have situations where you have parties who have the engineer fails to discharge his duties and say invites the contractor to give a proposal for a change, say in a road alignment, and the contractor does the technical investigations and provides the drawings. And then the contractor starts giving notices for changes and additional costs for something that they clearly carry their ability for a design. You have the engineer failing to make decisions on the extension of time within the time agreed in the contract, and the engineer giving extension of time weeks or months after the expiry of the contract. So these are areas where you clearly see that the people would use, parties would use a dispute board. The presence of the dispute board would be able to curtail a lot of these unnecessary costs to a project. Recently, I was giving a charge to a road authority where they have gone to arbitration. The parties signed the final contract, signed everything, finished off. But the employer fails to pay the debt that has been agreed. The contractor goes to start a new claim 2 years after this was done. So clearly, these are areas where the presence of the dispute board would be helpful and will be able to remind the parties of their obligations. So there are many examples that I'm able to share with the parties. And I try to wear the cap of a trainer and have some informal discussions on some of the issues, and it helps in a way. So again, there are many issues on the African continent dealing with contracts where the benefits of the DAB, and I wish that there was a forum where some employers who have benefited from the presence of the dispute boards would share their experiences with some employers who are still reluctant to engage dispute boards. I think
that's
countries like Ethiopia, Uganda stand out as some of the leaders in the use of the dispute boards, and there would be good examples to other African countries.
and this may be a recommendation to CRCICA to be that forum or to be that platform to have that exchange.
Yes.
Because I see reluctance, and I see Mr. Omar's comments on his experience that the dispute boards aren't taking traction. So I think I'd like to delve into this section a little bit further. Lee, how have you convinced, or how have you negotiated, or how have clients been convinced, possibly on OBOR projects?
Yeah, actually, it's a really good question regarding how to convince, especially the owner or the employer, to use this mechanism. For the past years, I used to be working with in Power China International, which was the #2 largest in China. But they are the Power China, is the largest company who have been using this DRB or the DAB or DAAB mechanism among all the Chinese companies. But still, sometimes I'm facing the problem to share the view with the employer. But from my personal experience, if the employer take the project target to be just successfully achieved without too many claims or too many disputes pending for determination, especially for if I have seen, I have been really even suggesting the contractor not to claim for something which you are not entitled, but still sometimes you need some impartial parties or third parties who are really holding experience to justify whether the entitlement shall be given or granted just to the contractor or to be rejected, just so that the contractor performance can be properly maintained. This is to the benefit of the employer. You can see from the survey conducted by Creamery, the late performance and the poor contract management, poor contract drafting are the top 3 factors causing the dispute. Therefore, both the employer and the contractor, you two all needed a mechanism to resolve the issues without just keeping the project or keeping the disagreement pending, which will really jeopardize the relationship and also will jeopardize the progress of the project. This is my understanding, and also according to my communication recently to the financing institution, they listen to my recommendation, and also they do ask the owner of the project to have such a third party, the DB mechanism, or some of them will just incorporate the expert mechanism into their contract agreement. But comparing with the expert mechanism, I would like to just recommend the dispute board, because the DAB, especially the adjudication for most of the countries, the procedure somehow is just a little bit formal. Comparing with the arbitration, it's much shorter, saving the time and saving the cost, and also the members will know the project progress, will know the parties, and who are holding the trust and just the confidence from both parties. I think the dispute board do have such the function to help the owner to achieve the target of the project. This is my personal experience.
I think that's very, the idea that dispute boards can actually help with positive project management and facilitation of communication, because communication breakdown can also lead to lack of experience. And I really want to stay on this question, and I want to turn to Nicholas, because you advise clients, your counsel, you advise and advocate and also sit as a dispute board member. So what's your perspective on this?
I think that the industry fairly consistently has been slow to understand the benefits of the insurance policy, as you correctly describe it. And I think, like any innovation, that is a journey that those in power to decide how an infrastructure project will be documented and resourced will take time to accept. But I think that the data is mounting now. The empirical evidence and better quality statistics that are relevant not only to the home of dispute boards, the North America, but outside. And so I think it is very much limited by the time-consuming journey of capacity building and trust building in this facility. But I'm pretty confident. And as regards what I advise, I'm a serious adherent to the unique qualities of a standing board as an early intervener and facilitator of problem solving, be it potential disputes or indeed just management problems that can arise on a project. And so with the right staffing and some educating of the parties involved, I think it can be a tremendous asset. I mean, if you compare it with the management committee and all the various forms of management committee that one finds, liaison committees and the like, they seldom work when there are serious problems on a project of a commercial kind, having commercial consequences. They if exercised, and they're often ignored, if exercised, they still lead to deadlock. Because there's no objectivity, obviously, at the stage where there's someone on the line or a lot of money on the line. So having the early intervention of an objective, neutral, and experienced board is unquestionably wise. I just think it's taking time, and I can speak for a number of continents when I say that it's not a regional problem. I note the comments regarding the various parts of the Middle East, but East Asia is similar, and Central Europe too. It took a long time to take off. So those are my views. I certainly encourage it. Of course, it's seldom the lawyer's call on whether that's going to be actually implemented. But if asked, that's my.
Thank you. And I think what I'm hearing is that everybody shares the perspective that it's a useful tool. When you try it, people encounter success. And I see we're having another question. Well, Mr. Omar, I appreciate your questions and I appreciate your engagement. And I think when you're talking about subclause 20.7 and FIDIC, we can answer those questions specifically about FIDIC, but I'd like to focus our session on CRCICA and the CRCICA rules today. And while the enforcement under 20.7 of the FIDIC 99 rules, the panel could discuss it at length, I beg your forgiveness in that I won't engage in that question at this moment, because I want to focus on the CRCICA rules and FIDIC has done a lot to adopt and adapt the dispute board concept, as Yasmin has introduced it to us, and focused on dispute adjudication boards. But CRCICA is not specific to a particular contract, although it can be used in any long-term type of contract. It can be used in construction and others. And I think the panel's experience here is vast and in executing contracts, negotiating contracts, and the like. So if if we have any more questions from the audience in regard to dispute board rules, I welcome them. And I would happily engage with Mr. Omar, Engineer Omar, on a different platform in a continued dialogue, and I welcome that. But if we don't have any more questions, I've indulged the panel much beyond their time, and I thank them. But before we close and I turn it back to Dr. Ismail, I would just like each panel member to share with the audience their takeaways or their final thoughts. And I'll start with Lee. Please, the floor is yours, Lee, to share your thoughts.
Sorry, Aisha, are you starting with me?
Henry, why don't we start with you? Please share your final,
Okay.
share your thoughts.
I think for me, like I said, is to continue the innovation and keep on adding new facilities and which can assist the DB practitioners. There are many, and as you said, one of them would be even providing for conferences for the users of dispute boards in Africa, like the road authorities. That would be a good start, which I think the center can easily arrange and organize. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Can I turn it over to you, Nicholas?
Yes, certainly. I can see that, if you like, the race is on now in the dispute board world, as it has been for quite some time in the arbitration world, to improve upon the set of rules that another center has produced before the new set is being revised in the first center. But it's beyond the provisions of the center and the innovative procedures and facilities set down on paper. The human resources matter. In my experience, a board that isn't manned, and I use that word in both genders sense, isn't manned by suitably experienced members, is not going to function as well as one that is, when they may be operating under the same rules. But what I see with the center backing up these reforms in the procedures is a clear willingness and capacity to provide the human resource that's needed to actually carry out these functions. That's apparent from the work of the committee, which, as I said, is extremely impressive. The thought that's gone into these rules just indicates to me the talent that exists in the center. And with that sort of human resource asset, I have every confidence that the running and functioning of these boards will be as superb as the rules envisage.
Mr. Lee.
Okay. The last word to all the parties, I trust such dispute board rules will benefit the project and the contract parties to avoid and resolve the disagreement. And for sure, according to my experience, it will help to improve both the employer and the contractor, and even from the financier, from different stakeholders, to help the different parties to improve their contract management, project management, and also the case management, especially with the guidance and also support from CRCICA, just throughout the whole process, running from the beginning to the end, not only for each one case or one particular case, especially for the capability building and also the improvement. I think this is much helpful to use the role in different projects and to follow the process and to pay attention, not only to the case, also to the people and also to the capability. This is my understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. Very wise words indeed to follow the entire cycle. And I can't add anything to what our esteemed panel has said, but what I can do, and what it gives me a great privilege to do, is thank our panel for their generous sharing of their insights and their knowledge and their experiences, and this really insightful presentations and dialogue. And I also thank the audience for staying with us and for their questions. I thank Mr. Omar for his engagement. I'm sorry that I didn't engage you fully on every aspect, but I really thank you, and I invite, if anybody has missed a certain part or would like to take it, this is recorded and it is on CRCICA's YouTube channel, so you'll have an opportunity to listen. And also I would recommend that you download the rules, the CRCICA rules, as you are listening to some of the presentations. And when Lee was talking about clause 4, clause 5, and Henry was talking about particular provisions, to download the rules and review the rules with the benefit of the tutelage that, or the commentary that's being said. So with that, to the esteemed panel, thank you so much. You made this a delightful session, an informative session for me. And to the audience, thank you for joining us for this important event. And I'll borrow from Niall Bunny's comments yesterday. He said this was a very hard undertaking to get to launch the CRCICA rules. But indeed, the hard work has just begun, of engagement, of sharing experiences with employers and throughout the life cycle. So I invite you to continue the journey with us as a CRCICA advisory member in sharing these experiences and collaborating further. So thank you again. And with that, Dr. Ismail, I turn it back to you.
Many thanks, dear Aisha, for your excellent moderation of this session and of yesterday's session as well. And I'm very thankful to the distinguished speakers for sharing their long experience in the field with us, and also for the support that I felt from them vis-a-vis CRCICA and our efforts to provide best practice of dispute board rules and management and case administration if requested, in order to serve the construction community, not only in Egypt, but in the region and on the African continent and beyond. I also wish to thank our media supporters, the RBF, the African Arbitration Association, Vincent Mason's law firm. They have done a tremendous work supporting us with two excellent distinguished speakers and their media support to promote this event. I also wish to thank the Egypt branch of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. There are also other media supporters who stepped in at the last moment to give us an extra support. The Russian Arbitration Association, and the flyer was translated to Russian, and the flyer was also translated to Chinese, so this would be interesting to show it. So I also thank the APA, the Association pour le développement de l'arbitrage en Afrique, for their support. I also wish to thank my colleagues at CRCICA, Ms. Heba Rojdi, Mr. Yahya Rashwan, and Mr. Sherif Ahmed, for their support and their very hard work in order to make these two launch events materialize. I thank the distinguished participants, those who registered and followed us through the Zoom platform, but also the numerous followers and the numerous participants who have seen this session as a live session on Facebook. Thank you very much. We have, for the future, we have to think about training. We need to train dispute board members and counsel. So we need to train future dispute board members. We need to train counsels and to engage with employers, with governments, with contractors, in order to maximize the use of dispute board in general and CRCICA dispute board rules specifically. And there is also a work on increasing the number of Francophone members of the dispute, the panel of dispute boards of the CRCICA. And we have started, I have received some suggestions from the speakers and from the dispute, from DRBF and from the committee members, and we are working on that, and we will certainly communicate our list to the different financial institutions in order to make sure that we are considered as an appointing authority and that the rules are considered in mega projects and even small and medium projects. Thank you all. Now I think everyone is allowed to leave. Do you want to say anything, Aisha? Okay,
no,
so
just thank you, Dr. Ismail.
we declare this event closed, and we wish to see you all in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.